Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tiff Talks Tech. Today, I'm excited because I am doing a solo episode, and today is going to be talking about the metrics we're obsessed with and the ones that we really should not be. And this is something that I'm continuing to learn, and I think that's ever evolving. But I know when we are, as marketers, sharing with our teams, we want to make sure our decks are sparkling, super pretty, have the best reporting. And this episode is dedicated to those metrics that we show in those reports. And like I said, the ones we really should not be focusing on anymore. I want to be very real with you. I have sat in so many meetings myself where everyone is so excited over things that really just don't make that big of a difference. And I will also say, when I was a brand new VP of marketing, I was so excited because I knew how to report metrics. I knew what the metrics meant. So, I'm fine, right? And I came into a meeting with one of my bosses and I was like, all right, we have really great impressions. And he's like, okay, stop focusing on vanity metrics. And that was the first time I heard that. And I was like, what? No, I'm not. No, these are really great results. I mean, they were fine, but it definitely wasn't the thing that was making a difference in our marketing. So I kind of want to go over, these are the things that we used to focus on back in the day. And this is where I think we should be spending our time paying attention to now. So, like I said, the first time I heard that word vanity metrics, I was like, I'm not vain. I didn't know what that was. So, let's talk about what is a vanity metric. They are the numbers that look really good on paper, but they don't exactly translate into any real business impact. So, those are things like impressions, social media likes, page views. It's very surface level, and often it doesn't tell us exactly why something has happened or what we can do next. So, we obsess over these, and they're pretty easy to measure. They're easy to celebrate because the numbers look really good. And it's pretty addictive. I mean, studies have shown that you get a dopamine hit every time you see those numbers go up, and especially when it's a big number. And that's why we get really excited over impressions and things like that. Even in my own social media life, in a former life, and I think I've talked about this before, but I was an influencer and I had a Disney Instagram. I used to go to Disney every single weekend, and I worked with a lot of really cool brands like Coach. I worked with Estee Lauder. I worked with Disney themselves. And I was constantly looking at things like this, like followers. And after a while, my followers, they were still going up, but my likes were going down. And it just felt like my analytics were all over the place. And I couldn't figure out, okay, why is nobody engaging with my content? So here's the deal. Those numbers, looking at things like follower count and impressions and all that, it creates this sense of false success. And if you're not pairing that with a deeper outcome driven type of metric, then you're just decorating a dashboard with fancy numbers and pretty pictures. So let's kind of dig into those numbers that we really should be focusing on from here on out. So let's talk about the one that we shouldn't be focusing on. That would be, let's talk about some of the metrics maybe we shouldn't be focusing as much on. Click-through rate. So click-through rate can be very useful, but a lot of marketers, they use it like it's the holy grail of ad performance, which is not. A high click-through rate, it really doesn't mean anything if it doesn't result in a conversion. You could have the best clickbait in the world, but if nobody fills out your form or takes an action, what are we really excited about? Yeah, they're clicking on it. Great. To do what? So a better metric that you could use instead would be cost per qualified lead, or even what would be better than that is a conversion rate post-click. Those are going to be things that really show you what actions are going on. The next thing is social media followers. So, of course, like I was saying earlier, I would get so excited watching that number grow. And I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm so popular. All these people want to follow me and see what I'm doing, and etc. But follower count, it's really not a measure of your brand health, your customer interest, or even your revenue potential. That's for sure. You could have so many followers, 10,000 followers, and no engagement. And that is what was happening to me. I think I did have 10,000 followers at one point. And as social media has changed, that has changed as well. And I think It's so important. Don't be like me. I think I had all these followers who were just not engaging with my content, didn't really care. And then I had to kind of figure out, okay, are all of these followers even real people? Are they just deactivated accounts? Like, what is going on? And so, really, from the beginning, you want to try to engage your audience. Make sure you're not inflating your numbers with people who don't actually care. You could have 10,000 followers and no engagement, but you could also have 1,000 super loyal advocates who actually care, comment, and convert. And that's another thing. Another one of the brands that I worked with was Aerie, who is kind of American Eagle's loungewear brand. And I loved working with them. They were so fun. And I just thought it was crazy that they wanted to work with me because even though I said I had 10,000 followers at the time, compared to other influencers in our industry, I was definitely a micro influencer with those numbers. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so great. And I look at a lot of the other Aerie influencers, and they also had like 5,000 followers. Some of them had 1,000 followers. They had high engagement rates. And that was something that I thought was really amazing about the Aerie brand, and that they didn't really care if you had a super high follower count or a lower follower count. They were more concerned about the type of engagement you're getting and that being more authentic and real. And that was kind of the crux of who they were. So something better that you could look at instead would be engagement rate, the brand sentiment, or even branded share of voice. The quality is so much more important than the quantity. Like I said, we want to make sure that we're getting those authentic interactions and not just the inflated, like that's so easy. Next, website traffic. So this is something that feels really important. How many people were on our website? But just the traffic for traffic's sake, that's not really the goal. We could definitely have a spike in page views from some kind of vague campaign, and that might look really good until you realize that nobody stayed on longer than 30 seconds and nobody clicked beyond the homepage or interacted with what you had to offer. So something that could be better to take a look at would be session to lead conversion, time on a page, or even return visitor rate. If they're coming back to your page to see what you have to offer, that means they're likely to take that leap and make the purchase. So, what else should we really care about? Let's talk about those metrics that actually matter. This is one that can show you how your marketing is actually impacting the company that you're working for. And as a solo marketer, I've said this before and I'll say it again. It's so, so, so important to prove your worth as a marketer and to show that you're actually making an impact on what you're doing. And so if you have these metrics in your tool belts and you use them right and you present them right, these are things that could actually make a really big difference for you. The first is customer acquisition costs. So, how much are you spending to win that customer? That's really important and can take a lot of different things to win the customer. So do some deep diving into that. You can look at your customer lifetime value, which is, are you acquiring customers who actually stick with you? And what's the value of those customers? In our industry, I think it's a little bit easier to track that than it would be like a retail situation. That's great. Next would be lead quality and, just making sure that those leads that are coming in are qualified. I remember there was a time where I worked for a company and we had a ton of spam leads come in or a ton of other vendors who were trying to come into our funnel. And I don't know if they were just, wanting to work with us or what, but that would happen a lot of the time. So, you really got to go through those leads and make sure that they actually are people you want to talk to. Conversion journeys. So, kind of figuring out where people dropping off, what content is allowing them to move forward. Is it an email nurture campaign? Is it your social content? What is really getting them to re engage with you? And then your pipeline influence. Is your marketing contributing to the deals that are actually closing? And if it's not the final touch point, was it part of the journey at all? This is something I look at all the time and kind of going back and making sure, are the leads that I have, sure, they might be qualified, but are they closing too? I don't know. That's a good question. So that's something you always want to be looking at and making sure that your leads are quality. So, how can you actually get your teams to stop obsessing over some of these vanity metrics. Here are some of the things that I have seen work really well in the past. You can reframe how you define success. So start by asking your team, what is the business goal? You want to tie every metric back to that business goal. So, you might be wanting to bring in a certain amount of leads. You might be wanting to get in front of more people with your brand awareness. Just make sure you have a really defined goal in order to hit it. And then everything you do can revolve around that. If you're building dashboards for your metrics, make sure you build ones that are actually going to drive action. So don't just report what happened. Make sure you highlight those insights and the next steps. What story is your data telling you? And that's something even I've had trouble with in the past. I'll go back to my data and just stare at it for a while and go, okay, what is this trying to tell me? What do I think is happening here? So, if you have tools that can help you do that, that's wonderful. And that is going to be a great time saver. Lastly, you want to teach the why. So a lot of times, teams look at vanity metrics because they don't really understand the alternatives. So education is really going to change that behavior and help them understand. If you are leading a marketing team, ask this in your next meeting. If this metric goes up next month, so what? If nobody can answer that question, then it's probably a metric that's really not worth tracking and it's not worth your time. If you know what outcomes you want to see from that metric and what it means, then it is worth your time. Okay. And that is a wrap for today. If I have one takeaway that I want to leave with you, it is this: not all metrics are created equal. It's easy to chase the ones that look impressive, but the ones that really matter are the ones that move your business forward. So do me a favor, take a look at your dashboard this week. Ask yourself, which of these numbers are just noise? Which ones don't really matter? And if you have a hot take yourself on an overrated marketing metric, tag me on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear your reason behind it and kind of keep this conversation going. Don't forget to subscribe to hear next week's episode. Until then, stay curious, stay strategic, and I will see you on the next episode of Tiff Talks Tech.